Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder here. We're in the Laren Hall, RunBlogRun's global headquarters. It's Socialing the Distance. We're with Zach Panning, 209.28. He is a world championship team member going to Budapest. We're with his coach, Kevin Hanson. They're with the Hanson's Brooks ODP, which has been with Brooks since 2003, one of our oldest and most prestigious clubs in the U.S. Zach and Kevin, great to see you guys.
Good to see you, Larry.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
This is fun. So, Zach, 209.28, that is smoking, man. And your first marathon was 2:15:04. So, a little trivia for you. You were 2 minutes faster than when Frank Shorter ran his first marathon and finished his first marathon. He had tried one in 68, but he only ran 18 miles of that at the Olympic trials. He was like 19 years old. Little trivia for you. But what was the difference in feeling between a 2:15 and a 2:09?
I mean, Kevin would probably say this too, but the first race, the 2:15, first of all, the biggest difference I would say was the weather. It was a lot hotter in 2021 than 2022, but it was my first marathon, and one of the things that Kevin and Keith like to focus on is really learning the race and learning the distance. It's why we open up at a race like Chicago that's nice and flat. So you really learn what that is going to feel like before you add other elements like hills and a lot of bridges like a Boston or New York. And so I think we would probably agree that like first of all, our goal was to go in and run 2:15. And so, we wanted to learn it. I think we both wanted something that was doable, that we both felt was something that I could accomplish and really take the chance to really understand and learn how I was going to feel after 20 miles, because that was the furthest I'd ever run before. And so then the second one, I had that knowledge, and I had teammates who had a lot of experience in the marathon that I was training with in Wilkerson Given, and then just had a great weather day. And so training obviously went really well, and I was very confident on the day, but I think it was something that by the time we got to race day, it was something that I felt like I was very capable of. And so that's the biggest thing, is like I just was confident in the work that I put in and confident in the training that I had done.
Hey, this next question is for Kevin. Kevin, when you have your athletes focus on the marathon, is it a 12-week build-up, 16-week build-up? How do you do it?
It's normally a 12-week build-up, although it does depend on what their previous segment was prior to that. Sometimes if somebody's coming off of being a little dinged up, 12 weeks isn't enough. So we need to work into, because 12 weeks out, we get started pretty good 12 weeks out. We're not tiptoeing our way into things. So if we need to do that tiptoeing, then it can be a 16-week thing. And that first 4 weeks is getting us to the level that where everybody else is at 12.
You incorporate with Zach cross country, track, and road racing. What's the secret sauce to your program? Is there a secret sauce? Is there a secret?
Well, there's definitely not a secret sauce, but I do think that it's important for people I think we become stale in an event, and you pigeonhole yourself as that type of athlete. For example, his 209.28 may be the best performance he's had thus far, but I feel like his 10K needed to improve. And so just basically we move that needle here and then move that needle there. And I think one thing that happens is sometimes once you get into the marathon, it's hard to make time for those other things. And so we try to put importance into those other things and try to make those other things exciting. And, a lot of the things we do with cross will be team things and stuff like that. And we try to do that because it adds another element and makes something other than the marathon exciting for them, so that when they go back to the marathon, they feel a little more comfortable.
Zach, the next question's for you. You've done several 25 lappers, 10,000 meters, a race near and dear to my heart, 27:51, and you did that at the night of 10,000 PBs. Tell our readers what the insanity of that event is like.
It was awesome. It was just raucous, and you're running through beer tents on both sides. And so, there wasn't a spot of the track that people weren't just screaming down your neck. And so it was definitely a surreal experience, and it was definitely something that helped give me the energy to finally break through the 28-minute barrier. So yeah, I definitely want to go back, because it was definitely a really, really cool experience, and something that I'll cherish for a long time.
Cool. You were talking about the 28-minute mark and the 10,000 as a barrier. Was it kind of a block for you, or were you concerned that you could do it?
Oh yeah, it's been a long time coming. I think the last 3 or 4 years I've run under 28:10 probably 5 or 6 times, and as close as 28:01.
Wow.
And so it's just something that was, just one of those mental barriers in your mind. I think it happens a lot. It happened, I know, trying to break 14 in college. It's just something that once you break through, I feel like it's now second nature for me. So I think it's going to be a lot easier to do moving forward. But it was definitely a huge breakthrough, and something that I think is going to lead to more success down the road.
You run cross country, you race on the roads, you do track racing. What part, is there a favorite part you have of racing? Are you growing to like the marathon, or do you like the variety? How does it work for you?
I would say like the marathon at this point is probably like my favorite, I would say. But I think it, like Kevin was saying, I think it really spices things up and keeps things interesting to kind of bounce back and forth. It makes it exciting to come back to the marathon. It makes me look forward to, watching my teammates run Boston this year, for example. While I was doing a track season, I was excited about the track season, but I was also like excited and itching to get back to the marathon. And so once I get back to it, I feel like it just stokes that fire for all of those events, those just remaining well-rounded. I don't know exactly what we're planning this winter, but there's probably a chance that I don't run a lot of cross country, and that's something that I'll miss a little bit, and I'll be excited about next year. So
Kevin, you have prepared athletes for world championship races several times now. Brian Sells, Des, Dot, I think. City marathons are much different than a championship marathon. How have you prepared Zach for?
Yeah, I would say city marathons are different in one sense, but similar in others. And that is that for us, the one thing is when Brian came out, everybody was, when Brian was at his best and made the Olympic team, and everyone said, oh my God, he's like a human metronome. That guy can just click him off, so on and so forth. And he learned that he could do that with or without the help of a field. He could run up front if he needed to. He could run behind. If he fell off a group, it didn't matter, because if he was running within the parameters of the pace that he needs to, he's going to work his way back up. The funny thing is, then Brian leaves and everyone says, Des, oh my gosh, she's like a human metronome. It's like almost word for word the same things that they said. And it's because of how we train. And it's because of how those athletes adapted to how we train. And I will say this, Zach had a group with him in Chicago this year with somebody taking them through the halfway point on pace. Once the rabbit stepped off, pacer stepped off, the group kind of looked at each other, and Zach became the pacer for the entire group the rest of the way. And not because it was a job that he volunteered for, it was just a job that he's learned to handle. And that's what makes me really excited about going in with Zach right now, in his future right now. He doesn't need the other guy to be able to run the pace that he needs to run. And that becomes important, I think. A lot of athletes are like, oh my gosh, they were all sitting on me, or oh my gosh, I didn't want to have to lead that early, or oh my gosh, all of those things. Brian never said that in a race. Des never said that in a race. And Zach is acquiring those same kind of strengths.
That's cool. Zach, talk to me about the second half of the Chicago Marathon. Did you feel comfortable leading the group, or were you even cognizant of them around, or are you focused on what you were doing?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I was mainly focused on what I was doing. There was maybe a couple miles after the halfway point, I just remember kind of leaning into a mile a little bit more because I wasn't feeling spectacular at that point. Which is just one of those things. You know, you trust that you're gonna feel better in a couple miles, and slowly, like without even really realizing that I was putting in a move, I just started to hear fewer and fewer footsteps. And I looked around and I was, you know, I had a 20 feet, 20-meter gap on the guy who was behind me. And so yeah, I would say I really just kind of focused on what I was doing, continuing to run within myself and trust that you know, what I had trained for, the pace that I had set out to run was going to get me to the line, and I was going to get there, you know, going the right direction as opposed to fading too much. So,
so you head to Budapest, what, about a week before the race?
Yeah, 5 days.
Right. Kevin, when you start cutting back with Zach? Is it over the last couple weeks? Have you guys started to cut back a little bit now, or what's your philosophy?
A little bit. Basically, what we tend to do is we start without cutting back in the mileage as much as just giving a greater number of recovery days between sessions.
Okay.
So that becomes the first stage of the taper, and then the second stage of the taper is basically to start cutting back in everything. So we try to cut back in both volume and in intensity. So both of those things will take place kind of together. I'm not a believer in too long of tapers, and someone told me years ago, and I use this analogy a lot, and that is, if you sleep 8 hours a day every day, and then you sleep 10 hours, you're not usually more rested. You're usually lethargic. And that's because your body craves consistency. So the key with the taper is to try to trick the body into resting it without knowing you're resting it. So I don't like, if, you know, like just putting your feet up and relaxing because there's nothing to be gained fitness wise is a mistake, because your body will not feel normal.
What are the key workouts, Kevin, that you have in a basic week as Zach is building towards the marathon?
Well, we do things on a 9-day cycle. And
Okay.
so basically we go a long run, and then we go 2 days of recovery, and then we go something of substance on that 4th day, and then 2 days of recovery, something of substance again on day 7, and then 2 days recovery, and we're back to the long run again. So we don't do a long run every Sunday or every Saturday or once a week. Everything's on that 9-day cycle. And doing it that way gives us 2 days recovery between everything, and allows both the sessions and the long run to sometimes be a little more aggressive, because you're not saying to yourself, oh my gosh, if I run my long run too aggressively on Sunday, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to bounce back from my workout on Tuesday. Well, there isn't a workout on Tuesday. If you're going on Sunday, the workout's going to be Wednesday, and so on and so forth. But some of our key workouts that we do always is he's got one coming up this weekend, which is 2x6 mile. We also do the 26.2 mile simulator, meaning we do no tapering for it. It falls in the middle of wherever that is in the schedule, usually about between 3 and 4 weeks out. And he does 26.2 or 16 mile at marathon pace with a warm up and a cool down. And so 3 mile warm up and 3 mile cool down. So that day becomes a 22 mile day, but it's 16 of it at marathon pace with no taper or anything. So the legs are on tired legs, and that's already taken place. And that was a huge success.
Yeah, I saw that on Instagram. Zach, tell us about that. Talk about that workout. I'm interested. Are you doing that by yourself? What kind of things do you do to simulate the race?
Yeah, so I did it by myself. A lot of times, so I guess the last 2 marathons that I've done, we've found a half marathon to sort of do that at, but this was the first time that we'd done the 16 mile. And so I was definitely a little nervous going into it. But Kevin set up a course at Stony Creek Metro Park, which is where we do a lot of our workouts and stuff, to sort of emulate the course in Budapest. So fairly flat, like a slight rolling hill, which I appreciated. There's a little bit of a tunnel where you have a little bit of an uphill, and it was 4 loops, just like the 4 mile loops, just like the Budapest course will be 4 6.2 mile loops ish. And so it was really good to have those reminders that, like, you know, I'll be going through, this is what I want to feel like on the first loop, the second loop, and just really leaning into it on especially the third and fourth loop. It felt like running a mile basically, where you're really leaning into that third lap and then finishing the fourth lap. But yeah, it went really, really well. It was great to have a lot of support out there with teammates and coaches, and my wife was even out there. So that made it pretty easy, seeing them at every mile mark. And then we also do bottles as well. So that was nice too. And then Kevin even called in a nice rainstorm, since it's raining in Budapest right now. So
yeah, I've been watching BBC weather, and I'm just kind of going,
yeah,
wow. Yeah.
So yeah, we simulated that as well. So
well, there's a story of Bill Toomey, the 1968 Olympic decathlon champion, and I interviewed him a bunch of times, and he told me that he was training in Santa Barbara, and every time it rained, he pulled out the high jump pit and he practiced the high jump. And sure enough, in Mexico, in the decathlon, it is raining, and he's going, I actually practice this. I can do it. So I think those things are, that's wonderful. Do you have a different philosophy about racing, like the way you race Chicago as opposed to racing in a world championships? What's your goal in a world championship event? And both of you can, I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, I want to compete as best I can. And so I think, just again, like Kevin said, focus on my own race, because obviously we don't have pacers. There's potential that it could go out blazing fast. There's potential that it could go out really slow. But if I've trained at the pace that I'm planning to go out in, and I've built up that confidence that I know that I can do it even by myself, then that's what I'm going to try and do. And you know, that's all that I'll have. And so if I can get the most out of myself, I put myself in the best position possible to have success, as I guess, place wise. So that's my philosophy. But
Kevin?
No, that's exactly it. I think the biggest thing, like I say, is we're going to play to Zach's strengths. We're going to play to what I know that he can do. We're going to play to what he knows that he can do and feel comfortable doing it. One thing on that simulator, it's kind of funny, because although we were yelling splits and stuff to him, the one thing that I was yelling to him, probably, which was more important to me than the splits, was, what are you thinking right now on lap 2? What are you thinking right now on lap 3? And I would kind of bark that in his ear a few times throughout there, so that it became not just the physical activity of doing it, but the idea of visualizing him in the marathon himself during those stages of the marathon. And so, yeah, we'll have some things. The one thing that we have, I think, is, you know, with COVID and how everything was pushed back years and so on and so forth, we do have, I mean, there was a world championship 12 months ago. So it's our, you know, so we can look at things and say, okay, with respectable weather, which it was in Eugene, it was very good weather. We can look and say, okay, with a similar kind of day, how do we think this race is going to develop? How do we think it's going to go out? And we're not looking at something like Olympics. Cycles change 4 years to 4 years. And so the next one Olympics goes out slow and the next one goes out. And Wanjiru shows up into Beijing and says, nope, we're not running slow today. And so, you know, so it depends on things. But I think that we can look at the current situation, kind of make a fairly decent guess at how we think it's going to go out. And you know, it was 1 and 205.50s in Eugene, so it's not, you don't do that by going out at 520 pace. So that's not, you know, somebody's going to be after it fairly early.
Zach, how important is the mental training in your preparations?
Oh, I think it's super important. I think I've been we had our high school camp last week and now our middle school camp this week with the Hansons. And, I always try to remind kids that like trusting and believing in what you're doing is at least I think as important as the physical training that you're doing. I think that's something that goes way beyond all the physical stuff that you're doing. When you actually believe and buy into what you're doing, and buy into what a coach has laid out for you, and you believe that it's going to get you to the line and push you in the best position possible, I think you're in a really, really good spot. Obviously, the work has to be put in, and you have to be physically ready as well. But when you can combine those two, I think it's hard to stop you from getting better and having success.
Kevin, how do you guys how does Hanson's bring in mental training and sports psychology? Because I know for a long time in the US it was kind of poo-pooed upon. And I know watching European coaches when I would hang out and observe the British coaches and the European coaches, they would tell me it was one of the things that they were surprised that we weren't taking seriously. How does Hanson's incorporate that into their training program?
Yeah, I would say we do have a sports psychologist in the area that helps us occasionally. But I think Zach said it best with what he said, and that is the biggest thing is the athlete buying into themselves and buying into what they're doing. And by doing that, I'm somebody that I'm always reading a book, always trying to see what's next, so on and so forth. And then I'm always taking that information and just kind of subtly presenting it to the athletes without presenting it to the athletes, just in things that we do and things that I say and so on and so forth. But I think it's funny because when you say that about people not taking psychology serious, I think sports psychology, when you say this right now, I think you talk to anybody and no matter what it is, if you say, oh, okay, it's 80% physical and 20% mental. Okay. Let's just use that as a number for a second. Are you spending 20% of your time on mental stuff? If you're spending 98% of your stuff on physical stuff and none on the mental side, you're negating 20% of what you yourself said is involved in the sport. So I definitely believe in mental training for athletes.
Zach, if you were talking to a room full of college kids who were contemplating where they're going to go with their running after they graduate, what would you tell them is the difference between being a college runner and being an elite professional runner?
Yeah, I think it was something that I realized pretty quickly. In college, everyone's kind of has the same plan. So everyone's getting ready for cross country in October and November. Sometimes it bleeds into December for Division II, but they're getting ready for the postseason of cross country and then indoor track and then the championships for outdoor track. And at the professional level, people are peaking at different moments constantly. I think that was something that was tough for me to sort of wrap my mind around and know that maybe like at a certain race, at a certain US championship, I won't be like 100% confident and ready as I'd like to be, as I'd want to be at the line of a national championship for cross country in college and that sort of thing. But again, just like trusting that process, and leaning into those moments, and trying to be as fit as possible, as much as possible, was probably the biggest difference, and something that I'm still learning how to do, I think, and getting better at it. But yeah, that's the biggest difference, I think. Some days, some weeks, you might beat someone who you don't think that would normally be possible, and then other weeks you may be get beat by someone who you think maybe is not at your level that you feel you should be at. So that again, that's the biggest difference, I think.
Zach, what was the biggest lesson you learned from your first marathon experience?
Patience, I would say. even in training and stuff, like the way that we have talked about doing it, the way that Kevin sort of described it, and I've sort of described it, you're running your pace. And that's something that you have to learn. Like, obviously it's changed a little bit for me, from my first marathon to now, but being patient enough to run that pace early and trust that you're going to get people in the later stages of the race, because you've gone out at a pace that is within yourself and that you're confident and ready to do.
What is your go-to training shoe from Brooks? What do you use for your mileage days?
Mostly the glycerin is what I use. A little extra cushion. I believe they're on the 20.
I think
I don't know which one they're on.
22, 23. Is that
23? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but the new one, whatever number it is, has been really, really nice for me. Yeah, I've loved that. And then every once in a while I'll throw a Ghost in the rotation. So,
and what do you race in?
so at Worlds I'll be racing in the Hyperion Elite 4, which is it's the newest version of that Hyperion Elite shoe. That
Cool.
A team, yeah.
I'll try to get a picture of it. Now, what do you do your track racing in?
I normally the spikes. So the wire is what I've have been doing it in.
Okay.
But actually
Cool.
I ran the yeah. So
awesome. Kevin, talk to me about the importance of the last 10 days before a major event. What's your philosophy about that?
It's all of the things that Zach said about patience become like magnified over the last 10 days, because what happens is as we start to cut back, athletes start to feel better. So they start to be sometimes maybe a little too aggressive on daily runs. They tend to be a little bit too fast. So my biggest thing is don't do that. You know, I'm glad that he has teammates and stuff that are here that are not running the marathon and stuff, because they're not running the world championships, because they're not tapering now. And so I think they'll keep him honest the opposite way from being too fast on those days. And for Zach right now, I've been preaching that simulator went so well. We're in such a great place right now that we don't want to screw it up by trying to get just this much more. So over this last period, we're not trying to gain fitness. We're trying to continue to maintain and then allow his body to absorb everything he's done by resting and seeing how it rolls out for us on race day.
I remember asking Ian Stewart, the bronze medalist from 72 in the 5, how he put together the field, how he talked about the field that he was competing against in 72. And he said that of the 12, 6 of them had overtrained. 3 of them didn't think they could do anything. And there were 3 that he had to contend with. Do you guys look at the field? Or are you so focused on Zach's race, you kind of say, look, this is what Zach's doing. If Zach does his thing, that's all that matters.
You know, it's interesting because that's one thing that I didn't mention that is different from a big city marathon. Like the big city marathons, you know the field long in advance.
Right.
I'm still just learning the field right now because everybody final declarations were this, whatever, 2 days ago or 3 days ago or something. And so I'm still trying to see who's going to run from who, from which country and so on and so forth, and where he fits and where I think he can fit based on what he's run and how many people, you know, some of those, like, it's always interesting. You'll see PRs. I like to look at PRs that they've done over the last year instead of PRs that they have. Sometimes, you know, some countries will run somebody that has a 2:06 marathoner and you go, wow, well, that's somebody we got to keep our eyes. But the PR was from 6 years ago and he's currently running 2:09, 2:10, whatever. And so kind of doing a little bit of analysis. I have not broken down the entire field yet, to be honest with you.
Okay, cool. I wanted to talk about Hanson's Brooks ODP for a couple minutes. So you guys have been with Brooks now for 20 years, which is like 1,000 years in, running terms. What do you think? And now most of the brands that are supporting running have their teams and projects. What is it about the team atmosphere, Kevin, that makes this so important?
It's funny, Larry, what you just said, though. You used the word. The word is project. And the funny part is that was not out there at all until actually Keith, my brother, came up with that name. There was no. So like I always interested, like you go back and say, I wonder what the first track club was, or the first project was Hanson's. That was the first one. And then, and then it became Hanson's Brooks, but we were originally the project, so it was, that was Hanson's. And so Hanson's distance project. And then we, Hanson's original distance project, because there was nobody else. So any project, and it's so funny because I don't think people even know now. It's just become a name that people use all the time. It's just project for things, so it's like within our sport, but that started with Keith.
That's cool.
And so, yeah, I'm really proud of that. And, but in any case, the marriage with Brooks is what Brooks believed in what we were doing team wise. What we were doing is, I sat down with Greg Meyer, who's a friend of mine who, lives in Michigan and so on and so forth. And I said, I believe in what you guys were doing back with Greater Boston. I believe in the team concept. I believe that each of you are making each other better. But what I want to know is, what were the pitfalls? What didn't work then? What were the problems? And I talked to him about that in detail. I also talked to, going back to the Disney days, I had some big talks with Marty LaQuarrie, who used to broadcast all of those and things as well. And so, because Marty was also part of that Florida Track Club with Frank Shorter and Jeff Galloway and Jack Batchelor. And so all of those, I talked to people about the things that didn't work, not the things that did, and wanted to try to make it better for those things, because I believed in group training. Because, okay, obviously, when we look at the marathon, the best in the world are Kenya and Ethiopia, and they're group training because of finances. They have to pool the resources, and that's why they do it. But the third best country, and people say, oh, well, they're born at altitude, they're this, they're that, so on and so forth. Well, the third best country going away has been somebody else that is Japan. And that's and they also do group training. And so you go, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's some, Japan was smart enough to say there's something with this group training. So we tried stealing or taking the ideas that we believe that work in that team concept and bringing them here. And so there were teams in the 80s. There were not teams in the 90s that did that kind of thing. And so that was basically our thing, was let's get back to group training. Let's get back to you making me better and me making you better, and so on and so forth. And that became the idea. And that's what we did for a couple of years. And then when Brooks came on, Brooks helped us blow that up. So they took what we were doing and just made it tenfold better. And they never ever did anything that got in the way of what we saw as important for bringing back American distance running. They only added to it. So then I think other companies felt like they had to try to keep up with Brooks. And so other companies started creating these pockets of people, because they realized that just giving someone a shoe contract and sending them out on their own without support, without having coaching, without having physio, without having all of the little things, and just say, go train with your college coach, usually didn't amount in success, and certainly not success in numbers.
Zach, how has the team aspect of Hanson's, Brooks, ODP benefited you?
Yeah, that was something that I was looking for coming out of school. Was it's what has drawn me to the sport from the very beginning. It's when I was first started running, I was not a big fan of it, truthfully, and those tough days, really every day at that point. The only reason I showed up was because of my teammates, and so through the years, other things have motivated me, but one thing that has remained the same is the people that I surround myself with help me show up on days that are going to be really difficult and tough. And so here, we have a bunch of great people that consistently show up for each other and want the most for each other. And so, I've loved that. And I think it's definitely made me better. And I hope that I, in turn, have helped make my teammates better by doing the same for them. So
that's cool. Well, guys, you survived 40 whole minutes with me. Congratulations. No math questions. Zach, I wish you the very best in Budapest. I look forward to seeing you over there and actually meeting you in person. I've seen you at many races, so good luck. Kevin, looking forward to seeing you over there. Is Keith going to be with you?
He is.
Oh, yeah. This will be, I'm trying to think the first time I saw you guys at a World Champs, it wasn't Berlin. It was before Berlin, I think.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely before Berlin, before Helsinki, Paris, I think.
Yep. Paris was fun. Yeah, and we'll be back there next year. So it should be kind of fun. Well, Zach, thank you very much. Kevin, thank you very much. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. This is Socialing the Distance. We've had Zach Penning, 20928, member of the Hanson's Brooks ODP, and his coach, Kevin Hanson, one of the co-founders with his brother Keith of Hanson's Brooks ODP. And Zach is going to Budapest as a member of Team USA and will be competing in the marathon. Zach, very best wishes.
Thank you so much.
Larry.
Thanks, guys.
August 27th, Larry. August
All right,
27th.
we'll be there. You can watch it on
Thanks.
Peacock. Make sure you watch it on Peacock or NBC, sports fans. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder here. This is the Laren Hall. This is the global headquarters of RunBlogRun and the home of Socialing the Distance. We're on episode 131. We started this during the pandemic in February of 2020. Mike Deering has been producing these things for us since the very beginning. So he's put up with me for that long. Can you believe it? I'm not sure he can. But today we had a real fun one. And look, I enjoy interviews, as you can tell, right? But today was really interesting. We interviewed at the same time Zach Penning and his coach, Kevin Hanson. They're with the Hanson's Brooks ODP, Original Distance Project. The Hanson's team was started in 1999. In 2003, with lots of fanfare, including a major article in the Wall Street Journal on the first page of the business section. This had never been done before. Brooks announced their sponsorship of Hanson's. They've been with him for 2 decades. And the brothers, Kevin and Keith, two of my favorite eccentrics in the sport. And when I use eccentric or I use geek, it's a term of affection. Kevin and Keith Hanson get it. They know that you have to put a culture and a community together to develop athletes. And they were one of the first in the modern era to do it. And they've been doing this now for 24 years. Pretty impressive, huh? Zach Penning will be competing in Budapest. He's on Team USA in the marathon. He ran a PB of 209.28 in Chicago last year, October of 2022. The year before, he'd run a 2:15:04, his first marathon, and his goal was 2:15. So the guy, like a lot of the Hanson Brooks ODP athletes, is like a metronome. He has run a 13:36 for the 5,000. He ran 27:51:20 on the 20th of May at the Night of 10,000 PBs, one of our favorite events. And he is less than 10 days out. No, well, actually, he is 17 days out from his marathon. And we talked with Zach about his training and about racing. We talked with Kevin about the club, and we kind of went back and forth. I think it works really well. I'm very curious about what you have to say, dear readers, about it. So email me at runblogrun@gmail.com or like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is RunBlogRun, and our hashtag is Socialing the Distance. But this is episode 131. It features Zach Penning. I think he was a wonderful guest, and his coach, Kevin Hanson. Kevin is always incredible, but what you see is some of the amazing talent in North America. I remember going to my first World Champs in 1995 in Gothenburg. There was a Swiss TV crew in front of me, and there was a journalist who immensely disliked American track and field. And my French, while rudimentary, I understood that he was saying how crappy US track was. And after he got done with this thing, I went to the Swiss crowd and my team in my best French and said, if you'd like to know what it's really like in North America, that's what I do. And I spent a couple minutes chatting with them. I explained we have the best farm team in the world, 1.6 million kids at the high school level. We have 200,000 in college and sub-elite clubs. And from that, we develop our teams. But it's a culture and it's a time. And we have great coaches and we have inspired athletes. And I think we're at a great time in our sport. Team USA is taking 139 athletes to Budapest. Zach Penning will be one of them. Make sure you watch him on August 27th on Peacock. This is Larry Eder signing off. Thanks to Mike Deering for doing all the production work on Socialing the Distance. For now, we're into our third season. Talk to you soon.